Hi, I'm Adam Keane, and today I want to talk about student-teacher relationships, particularly what a teacher is looking for in a student. So if you like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and do whatever you do on YouTube to keep me going and to keep me interested. So, teacher. What is a teacher looking for in a student? Because I've discussed it from the other perspective of what a student is looking for in a teacher. Now let's go the other way around, right? So first of all, obviously a teacher is looking for a student who has somewhat of an open mind and is kind of interested in trying their suggestions, right? And it's a kind of a subtle balance, because we don't want a teacher who's so authoritarian in their mentality that we have to feel we try all their suggestions and do whatever they say. So it's still ultimately, what I'm saying is qualified by the fact that ultimately our teacher is a provider of space, a support in an unconditional sense. Whether we do what they like or we don't, the teacher should be there to give us support. On the other hand, the teacher is still human and wants to know that to some degree that they're of interest to the student, and therefore the student trying, not everything, but maybe trying or at least giving some kind of acknowledgement to their suggestions is a healthy thing for that relationship, right? If you're as a student never listening or trying anything that the teacher suggests, then soon enough, inevitably, the teacher will lose interest in teaching you because it's assumed you don't want to be taught, right? And I've been there as well, right? On the other hand, we shouldn't feel pressured to do the instructions the teacher is offering. We should still understand that it's our autonomy that is sacrosanct here, that is paramount here in the relationship. Secondly, practical things like acknowledging the teacher when you come in, acknowledging the teacher when you go out. It's really nice, it's really nice. It makes them feel like they're there as the holder of the space and you acknowledge your relationship with them, right? So little things like that. On the other hand, keeping personal boundaries at the same time, right? It's so easy here to project our experience, project our wish to find a surrogate parent or another lover, or treat the teacher like a friend or a brother or a sister. It's a particular relationship, but it's not a normal one, not one that we're familiar with, that we've got a blueprint for, as it were, a kind of habitual way of playing, right? This relationship is a weird one, right? So instead of projecting our normal sense of relationship on it, we have to keep an open mind, but on the other hand, we have to keep a certain sense of boundaries around this experience, right? A certain sense of distance, I suppose you could say, right? We don't want to start getting too close to the teacher because the teacher isn't a therapist nor a parent, and really any good teacher is ultimately going to throw the experience for oneself back on oneself, right? The autonomy and responsibility for the experience within the yoga room is essentially one's own, although it is navigated by the space created by the teacher. So a healthy sense of kind of balance there, perhaps a balance of listening, but also a balance of boundaries and self-autonomy is needed. Again, I say the role is a subtle one and it's not one that we're used to. On the other hand, it is also a role, right? A certain role navigated by a sense of hierarchy. Now, I know a lot of people won't like me saying this, but there's an authority that's necessary as the teacher, and a student has a certain sense in that playing their role in this hierarchy. It's a game, it's a role, and both people need to know it's a role play. It's not representative of their inherent value. Teacher is not better than student, student is not worse than teacher. But in this scenario, you need to have a gradient of skill, right? A gradient of hierarchy. If both are the same, then it's no trickle-down effect. There's no knowledge because knowledge flows from high to low, right? So if the student isn't somewhat below the teacher here, then nothing is likely to happen, right? So you have to have, it's all a role, it's all a game, but some sense of hierarchy within this role play, and that means some sense of respect and authority placed in the role of the teacher, right? So we're also looking for that. The acknowledgement of our role, I suppose, as a teacher is also important. Finally, perhaps keeping the channels clear, right? Keeping communication clear. Oftentimes we feel as a teacher, maybe there's a sense of holding back of the student, but we don't know what. And I think ultimately it's just probably the student's prerogative here, the student's responsibility to find and ask for a time to chat about things so we can clear any any kind of miscommunication that might be in the air, and this does have to happen sometimes with some people. Keeping those channels clear and actually communicating and verbalizing what we think really helpful. On the other hand, if you go to the teacher and just simply offload your baggage or project on them, then like any normal human being, they're also going to be upset, and you run the risk of spoiling that relationship. So be aware of that, and how you still have to treat the teacher carefully. They're only a person, they're not superhuman, and they're also fragile, vulnerable, and prone to being hurt and even taking offense, right? On the other hand, if you can't say anything to your teacher, this is a bad thing too. If you feel you're going to offend them, if you at all contradict them or ask them a question, then I would suggest you thinking again about your choice of a teacher. Any teacher who's heavy-handed in this manner isn't really the teacher I'm talking about, right? And finally, along these lines, just turning up honestly. The teacher's seen everything before. They've seen the good, the bad, the ugly, the amazing. They don't need to be proved to. They don't need you to demonstrate your ability or how much you know. They just want you to be interested and open-minded to some degree, right? So turning up honestly for the teacher just makes the whole thing flow so much more smoothly. And by the same token, generally the same thing is necessitated from the teacher as the student. The teacher also needs to turn up in a way that's got integrity, in a way that's stable, in a way that is essentially themselves honest, right? And then you've got this free, unobstructed kind of pathway of information, right, within the role play and the context of the classroom, and the gradiency of hierarchy there, and the awareness that it is only a role play, and the awareness that it's easy to project and extrapolate our feelings and put them onto the teacher, right? And finally, there's never an easy answer to this. It's constantly kind of trimming the sails here, kind of thinking, how can we do this better? How can we relate better? And keeping communication lines open, right? The language is the most powerful thing we have ultimately, as well as physical demonstration, as much as now and again at the start, as I suggested. If the teacher is teaching you something, it's still well and good to acknowledge to some degree if you don't want to do it and give the reason, and if you don't mind doing it, have a go, because they've offered that in the spirit of goodwill, and it's also nice to acknowledge their role here. But ultimately, as I mentioned, I still want to ascertain and still want to emphasize that the teacher is the holder of space, and you as a student should be able to turn up in any way that you need to, that you see fit, and be acknowledged and accepted by the teacher. Anyway, like, subscribe, and comment perhaps. Give me a comment. I'll see you again soon.